And I think the reason that they have the fund and they fund their own investigation is so that they can control the narrative, so that they can overwhelm the actual police with leads and red herrings to follow and waste their time and their resources with stuff sent to them by their private investigators in order to prevent the police from looking back at them, the obvious suspects. And this has been going on ever since the British government got involved. Ever since Clarence Mitchell touched down in Portugal, the Portuguese police have been fed with wild geese to chase. And if they don't chase those geese, they get accused of misconduct and get their feet held to the fire for not chasing down every lead. Right? So it's a diversion tactic. You fund your own private investigation. You have your own fund so you can shut down anyone who doesn't believe you. So you can fund your own investigation and send leads in order to overwhelm the actual police who should be looking into you. And you have enough money to live comfortably and put on the show that you're actually innocent and searching. Is the Madeleine McCann Fund a charity scam? I'm Deception Detective. I'm an attorney trained in statement analysis, and this channel exists to expose lies and manipulation. Before we proceed, please hit the like, subscribe, and notification bell. In today's video, we're going to analyze the second half of an interview the McCanns did with Channel 4 News around 2 years after Madeleine went missing, and it's all about how their fund is low on money. And we're going to investigate why the fund exists if its main purpose is not to find Madeleine. So if they believe Madeleine can't be found, what is the point of the fund? Let's listen.
To be honest, because as Jerry said, you have to question the motives of people.
So are you still quite hurt by the things that you read?
Well, a lot of the rubbish I don't read, to be honest, because as Jerry said, you have to question the motives of people like that. People who want to insist on something without evidence, people who want to bring, more pain and suffering to a family who are already vulnerable, who are already suffering. You really have to question those people.
I think this part, I have not watched this part of the interview. In my last video, we watched part 1, and a commenter mentioned how when they say these people who accuse them of having killed their daughter need to be questioned, that could be a veiled threat, and I believe it might actually be. So when they say, hey, if you don't believe what we say, maybe you need to be questioned, maybe you need to be investigated, I do feel like that's a veiled threat. And in my video, How to Derail an Investigation, we saw their PR guy, Clarence Mitchell, say some of the same things where they're veiled threats that if you don't believe them, well, maybe we need to look into you. And this is a technique that Scientology also uses to shut down their critics. Right? So if you criticize us, maybe we might start coming after you and criticizing you. Except the way he did it was he was talking about the Portuguese police. Right? So when Clarence Mitchell did it, he wasn't threatening journalists and the British public like the McCanns are here. If this is a veiled threat, he was threatening the Portuguese police when he was saying, well, if they're not following every lead and instead looking at my clients, maybe that's some police misconduct. Maybe they're being prejudicial. Maybe we need to review those police officers. Let's listen to that again.
So are you still quite hurt by the things that you read?
Well, a lot of the rubbish I don't read, to be honest, because as Jerry said, you have to question the motives of people like that. People who want to insist on something without evidence, people who want to bring...
The other irony, so this must have been in my previous video, I don't remember it word by word, but this clip must have been there because I do recall another commenter saying how ironic it is that they talk about people insisting on something without evidence, and you have to question their motives. Well, that's exactly what we're doing here on the channel. When they insist that someone abducted their daughter without any evidence of it, that is a red flag that I question. There's a reason we've done 18 videos on the McCanns, because we're doing the exact same thing. I'm questioning their insistence and conclusiveness about a kidnapper our stranger abductor, because they are so conclusive about it and have been since day one, despite the lack of evidence. That is a sign of a hoax, whether it's a true crime hoax, like I believe we have with the McCanns and the Ramseys, or a more conventional hoax like Bigfoot, which we've analyzed on the channel, or aliens, like we've analyzed Bob Lazar. So hoaxes have 4 criteria that make them all very similar. And one of those criteria is conclusiveness. So the irony is that they are criticizing people for being insistent about stuff despite evidence when they are doing that themselves.
Don't read, to be honest, because as Jerry said, you have to question the motives of people like that. People who want to insist on something without evidence, people who want to bring, more pain and suffering to a family who are already vulnerable, who are already suffering. You really.
And then here's another thing. So I know I'm pausing a lot at the front end of this. I didn't realize Kate was going to be so rich in statements. So we will let it play smoother down the road, but right now everything she's saying is a follow-up to something we said in the previous video. So now Kate says that you have to question these people because they're bringing more pain and suffering to parents who are already vulnerable, right? So trying to shame the people that don't believe their story. And I actually did a post on X about this, so I'm going to show it to you. Some of the tactics that these mid-level manipulators use, and I've seen pop up in the comments, and how you can identify them and respond to them. So I'm going to switch over to that right now. So conveniently, I did this post a few hours ago, mid-tier manipulation tactics, superstition, shame, whataboutism, and false dichotomy. Maybe I'll cover all the rest in a different video because the McCanns use all of them. But right now, let's just focus on shame. So often in my McCann's videos or Summer Wells videos or Ramsey videos, I get people saying something along the lines of this comment here from Mike Graham, right? You're making money out of someone's grief. A bit shameful, don't you think? Or these parents have already suffered a tragedy. Don't you feel bad bringing more pain to them? Well, that is a mid-level manipulation tactic where you try to shame someone into backing off of their opinion or just leaving a topic alone. And my response to that has been, and always is, this. I only care about 2 things, the truth and teaching people how to spot it before misinformation becomes too powerful. I can't be shamed, I can't be bought, and I can't be blackmailed. Capiche? So when the McCanns try to shame the British public or journalists or commentators like myself or Pat Brown or Peter Hyatt or Sonia Polton or Detective Amaral, it is a mid-level manipulation tactic. Maybe it works on some people, but I don't feel ashamed about pointing out a liar when I believe I see one. That's the entire point of my channel. So what they're trying to do here is a manipulation tactic. Also, while we're on the topic, I'll just point out this other mid-level manipulation tactic, which Kate just tried to do as well, which is a false dichotomy, where she says, right, you're accusing us of killing our daughter. Well, we're already grieving parents. How could we do that? So I've had comments along those lines as well, right? Like this one from Steve Evans. Dear Deception Detective, these people are grieving. They have lost their daughter. It's been going on for many years. I do not believe they are deceiving. I think they are ground down, institutionalized, yet grieving. And my reply to false dichotomies like that, particularly this one, I replied, I also believe that they are genuinely grieving the loss of their daughter. However, I also believe they are lying. Right, so you have to escape binary thinking. Both can be true. Right? I don't think they deliberately killed Madeleine. I think it was a tragedy. I think at worst it was manslaughter due to negligence. And Steve Evans replies, grieving and lying. And I replied, grieving and lying are not mutually exclusive actions. The loss of their daughter is a tragedy, regardless of whether they were involved in her death and cover-up. Right, so Kate, right here in this statement, uses 2 mid-level manipulation tactics that can easily be refuted and pushed back against if you just stick to your ground and realize why you're doing what you're doing, right? We don't make these videos to humiliate them or mock them or even be rude to them. We make these videos so you can spot what a liar looks like, and I believe they are in fact liars, and they're very good to learn from because they lie publicly, they do it a lot, and they do it in ways that you commonly see in everyday life because they are mid-level, run-of-the-mill liars.
Really have to question those people, and I don't value their opinion, you know, because I wouldn't behave like that. So, you know, you can't be, you know, distracted from what is important, which is Madeleine, by people like that. The majority of people are good people. They're the quiet majority, and I strongly believe they're the ones that want to find Madeleine.
So notice the people who are good are sitting there quietly doing what they're told by the McCanns. Open your wallet to give us money when we ask for it, and shut up if you have any questions about our story, about why we did not help the investigation, why we refused to do a polygraph, why we refused to deny involvement. Don't ask those questions. Don't be skeptical. Never be skeptical. Just sit back and shut up and open your wallet when we ask you to.
And you're appealing.
And if you don't shut up, maybe we need to question your motives. Maybe we need to sick a private investigator on you or a lawyer on you. Right. Another funny thing in my last video is so many people saying, well, I'm surprised they haven't sued you yet, Dee. I think it will come down the pike. They are welcome to try me. Right. If you don't know, I am an attorney. I don't need to be like a Detective Amaral who has to fund his own defense. Right. They are welcome to try me. I am happy to depose them. I would love the opportunity to depose them. So they're welcome to have at it.
Formal funds. What happened to the money that you had previously? There's around, I understand, 350,000 left. What happened to the previous money that was donated?
Okay. I think the first thing to say is that the priority today is very much about asking the public to help us with a petition to get the government to do more. We have been...
So notice the journalist asked them, what happened to all the money? You had all this money, now you only have 50,000 pounds left. And Jerry doesn't answer, right? So notice the deflection. He reframes. The priority today is asking people to sign a petition. So all the taxpayer money, our donations, our grants we received, whatever happened to that, that's none of your business. Be one of those quiet majority, those pleasant little sheep who never question us, who do what they're told, who feel shame if you question us. What happened to that money is none of your concern. Right now, we're asking you to do us another favor. Now go sign this petition.
Been fortunate, although it's not helped us get what we want, by having a fund, and the fund was set up in response to people offering money, and it was set up properly, and the fund's very accountable. It's independent auditors. We have a fund administrator who's got lots of experience, but the vast majority of the money in the fund's been spent directly on search fees. It's obviously supported other things, awareness campaigns. We have a part-time coordinator now. We have a media liaison to deal with things like this here and in Portugal and trying to get our messages across.
So notice the fund is not just for searching. It's also for reputation management, media liaisons. People like Clarence Mitchell, I believe, right? So Clarence Mitchell first came onto the scene a week after Madeleine went missing. And I did a video about this, how to derail an investigation. He was from the British Foreign Office. He came to Portugal to support the family and then was hired on full time. So he left his job, as far as I understand it, right? From what I've read in the British press. He left his job to become their PR person full time, which is interesting, which is why in that video, I hypothesized that maybe he does know what happened. Maybe he does know something, and if enough pressure could be put on him or enough incentive, maybe he would reveal it. Because the decision to quit a government job to be the PR person full time for the parents of a missing girl is a very bad job security choice, unless you know that girl will never be found. For example, if he quit his job at the Foreign Office, became their full-time PR person, and Madeleine was found the next day, he'd be out of the job. He would have left his job. He'd be stranded in Portugal. Why would they have to pay him anymore? Madeleine was found. So I do believe, and like I've said in that video, so I recommend watching that one, How to Derail an Investigation, if you want to see a powerhouse of persuasion and understand how the Madeleine McCann investigation was derailed so early on when the British government got involved. But the fact that he left that job to be a PR person full-time, I believe he must have some sort of job security. They must have told him something to persuade him that he will be in the job for a long time. Right, that Madeleine will not be found tomorrow, whether they said it explicitly or whether they insinuated it and he was smart enough to pick it up. But anyway, that's a long shot. That's a different topic. I won't belabor it, but it is another thread that we could follow. And in that video, I talked about how we could pull on that thread. But I'm just raising up these things, just like the idea I raised about making a petition to go check all the wells within a day's drive of the hotel. The reason for doing that would be to see how the McCanns respond to it. So for example, if we did a DD channel fundraiser, I'm not saying we're going to do this because it's not the point of my channel, but let's say someone did it, right? One of you guys, one of my members or subscribers ran with the idea, a fund to go search every well within a day's drive of the hotel. I would love to see how the McCanns respond to that, because I suspect they would try to shut it down. I suspect they would not send any money to support it, even though ostensibly, if Madeleine were actually missing and they didn't know what happened, they should be all for it. So I would love to see that, just to see how they would react to it. I think it'd be very telling whether they supported it or whether they do what I suspect they would do, which is as soon as it were announced, if it got enough attention or press, they would start doing interviews and having their lawyers go out to try to shut it down, or to try to use PR to discredit it, like it's a grift itself, right? So doing some projection, right? Like it's raising money to slander them or not actually to find Madeleine. But those are two threads you can follow. If you've been following my channel for a while and have seen this entire playlist, you should be familiar with them already.
But most of the money, the vast majority of it's been spent.
We've had to fund an investigation for 2 years now, which, as you can imagine, with several more than that personnel, it costs money, you know. And
staff, expenses, interviewing. We run a 24-hour helpline, which is available. We run a website that costs money, updating it, communications. You know, all of these things do add up. And without having the fund, there wouldn't be a meaningful search today.
You've also spent money on your own investigators, as you said, and there have been reports that some of the...
Once again, like I pointed out in the last video, so I'm not going to belabor it too much here, notice how they always stop short of saying finding Madeleine. All right, so one part of statement analysis is the expected versus the unexpected. If I were the parent, a reasonable parent of a missing child, you would expect would say the point of the fund is to find my daughter, right? So without the fund, Madeleine will not be found because the police dropped the ball, something along those lines, right? Without the fund, we won't find her. Without the fund, we won't catch the person who took her. Without the fund, we won't figure out what actually happened that night. But they always stop short of saying find her or anything along those lines. It's always the search. Without the fund, we won't have a search, or we won't have an investigation. And I think this is leakage, where in their minds, they know she's not going to be found. So their brain doesn't even think of saying that. It just stops short and says, well, without the fund, there won't be a search. Right? So you always speak based on everything you know, whether you realize it or not. And the example I always give is if you're speeding and a cop pulls you over and they ask, do you know why I pulled you over? If you know you were speeding, you will say something different than if you know you weren't, even if you're trying to deceive the police officer. So here the word found or locate her or catch the person who took her doesn't occur to them because in their minds they know there is no culprit to catch. There is no little girl out there to be found. I believe they don't do that because they know she's dead. And once again, as always, these are just my opinions based on my analysis.
These detectives have taken money but they're not delivered. They're dodgy detectives, if you like. How can you reassure people that money won't be spent on people like that in the future?
Well, we've very much had, for the last 2 and a bit years, with a Dave Edgar, who's a very experienced detective who was near retirement. He's been working with us. He's very much accountable for the spend. He feels he can justify every penny. But at the same time, I hope public realise as well, as directors of the...
Once again, notice, this investigator is so great because he can justify every penny. He's very accountable. Not that he can find Madeleine or he can develop a new lead that will lead us to her. And I think the reason that they have the fund and they fund their own investigation is so that they can control the narrative, so that they can overwhelm the actual police with leads and red herrings to follow and waste their time and their resources with stuff sent to them by their private investigators in order to prevent the police from looking back at them, the obvious suspects. And this has been going on ever since the British government got involved. Ever since Clarence Mitchell touched down in Portugal, the Portuguese police have been fed with wild geese to chase. And if they don't chase those geese, they get accused of misconduct and get their feet held to the fire for not chasing down every lead. Right? So it's a diversion tactic. You fund your own private investigation. You have your own fund so you can shut down anyone who doesn't believe you. So you can fund your own investigation and send leads in order to overwhelm the actual police who should be looking into you. And you have enough money to live comfortably and put on the show that you're actually innocent in searching.
The fund, and particularly when we were Arguido and there was no search going on, that it was incumbent upon us to continue a search in very, very difficult circumstances. So we have made decisions along the way which have always, we felt, been in the best.
So this is interesting. Look, when he says they started the fund, I think it's exactly what I said. They started the fund when they were the prime suspects. They had to develop other leads and red herrings to sick the Portuguese police on.
Every penny. But at the same time, I hope public realise as well, as directors of the fund, and particularly when we were Arguido and there was no search going on, that it was incumbent upon us to continue a search. And
Right, so when they were the prime suspects, when they were arguidos, i.e. formal suspects in Portugal, they had to have this fund going to search and develop new leads.
Very, very difficult circumstances. So we have made decisions along the way which have always, we felt, been in the best interest of the search to find Madeleine. And
once again, in best interest of the search to find Madeleine. Not in the best interest of Madeleine, or in the best interest of finding Madeleine. The best interest of the search for Madeleine. Right? And he's not doing this deliberately. Right? He's always ending the ultimate goal at searching for her because he knows she's not going to be found. Right? That's how leakage works. When someone does something like this where they pick a word that reveals the truth, it's called leakage because they're trying to suppress the truth that they know and speak based on their imagination, right? So the fabrication they're trying to push, which is that Madeleine is still out there, and trying to suppress the knowledge that she is not out there to be found. And what happens is the knowledge, the stuff in your head, your memory, what you know is stronger than your imagination and fabrication, and it comes out in your word choice. Right? People pick their words they use in milliseconds. And even on the channel in earlier videos, you guys have caught me leaking my theories about Madeleine by the words that I chose, right, early on in this series, before I wanted to be so definitive about what I thought happened, right? I didn't even want to give my full opinion in order not to bias everybody, because I hadn't quite formulated it. And some of you eagle-eared listeners actually caught my own leakage, right? So it happens to everyone, whether you're aware of the phenomenon or not. So listen again. What is the point? The point is to fund the search, not to find her.
A search in very, very difficult circumstances. So we have made decisions along the way which have always, we felt, been in the best interest of the search to find Madeleine. And we're very accountable. All the expenses are there, receipts, and we've got quite a tight-knit team working on this. But we need them. Without it, there will be no one there to go and interview people and follow up leads.
But what about some people might say,
Once again, no one there to interview, no one to follow up leads, no one to find Madeleine. Right, that's important. I know I'm harping on it, I'm repeating it because it's very important. In this part of the interview, he hasn't said find once. In the last part, in part 1, he said find once the entire interview 5 minutes in. If you've seen my video, What Do Innocent Parents Sound Like? You can compare how these parents speak to parents who actually do not know what happened to their children.
might say that the judgment of the trustees is sometimes questionable because you have involved people like Kevin Halligan, who's now facing extradition.
Well, you know, we're doing the best in very, very difficult circumstances. I think that's key. We always take advice. Due diligence is done, references are sought, and you know the fund is accountable. And as directors, we're responsible for.
Just as a point of statement analysis, and this is in the deception deck. So if you've not pre-ordered, you can pre-order your deception deck at deceptiondeck.com. It is my 52 favorite rules about spotting liars. And thank you to everyone who has pre-ordered. They're at the printers now. They'll be shipping in a few weeks. But here we have Jerry using passive language. So the journalist just asked him about some investigator who it looks like embezzled money from them and is trying to be extradited for criminal proceedings. And the journalist is asking them, right, are you doing more due diligence now to make sure that the money's not wasted like it was wasted on that one guy? Listen to how Jerry speaks.
It's questionable because you have involved people like Kevin Halligan, who's now facing extradition.
Well, you know, we're doing the best in very, very difficult circumstances. I think that's key. We always take advice. Due diligence is done.
Due diligence is done. Right? That's a passive construction. He doesn't say we do due diligence or I do due diligence, just that some vague due diligence is done by somebody. Right? Due diligence is done by people every day, right, at Fortune 500 companies. So he's not saying that they in particular do any due diligence at their fund, just that in the wider world, due diligence happens to be done, which is a true statement. But it's also passive. So it does not actually reassure me at all that any real due diligence is being done at their particular fund, because he didn't say that.
References are sought.
Right, references are sought. Who is seeking them? Whose references? Is it done every time? We don't know any of that, right? So that's the danger of a passive construction, right, of passive language. And it's something you should be on the lookout for because it's a common tactic that liars use in order to give you a seemingly nice-sounding response, but without revealing the identities of anyone involved, right? Whose references are being sought? Who's seeking them? Are they being sought every time? So that's just a point about statement analysis, which is the passive construction. Liars use it all the time, or people who are trying to deceive you via omission, right, without actually lying to you. Right? He hasn't told a single lie, I believe, in this entire interview. Right? Even in part 1, I don't think he's ever told a lie. And that's how most liars operate. They do not lie by commission. They don't make up something. They tell you a true thing, but they omit critical details or context.
And the fund is accountable, and as directors we're responsible for making those decisions.
And there are also reports that you'd fallen out with some of the trustees, your brother and your boss, who have resigned.
That's nonsense. That's absolute nonsense. Why do you say we're falling out? I mean, the fund has changed over 3 years, 3.5 years. It was very different. Initially, we weren't on the board because we were based in Portugal.
3.5 years ago that we'd be in this situation today. It's a big.
So this is another nice little point of state. This is why the McCanns are so good for our channel, is because they do so many common mistakes that liars make, right? In your real life, you're not going to see a lot of people who lie like Casey Anthony, because I do believe she's a psychopath. Most people are not that bold of liars, right? Or O.J. Simpson, who we've also looked at on the channel. Or even Alan Dershowitz, who is a more sophisticated liar. If you saw my video, what does a sophisticated liar sound like? Or sophisticated manipulator. The McCanns make lots of the common mistakes. So here, notice, she asks, have you had a falling out with your brother-in-law? Does he deny that? Or does he deflect?
And the fund is accountable, and as directors we're responsible for making those decisions.
And there are also reports that you'd fallen out with some of the trustees, your brother and your boss, who have resigned.
That's nonsense. That's absolute nonsense. Why do you say we're falling out?
That's nonsense, so it's mockery. Something can be nonsense and true, right? Something can be ridiculous and true. And then he says, why do you say that? Right? Asking why someone says something is not the same thing as saying, no, we never had a falling out. Right? He never fell out with me because he thought I was wasting his money.
I mean, the fund has changed over 3 years.
And then this is a tangent, an unrelated answer. The question was not, has the fund changed? The question is, did you have a falling out with your brother-in-law? So we have mockery. Then we have a question with a question. So if someone answers your question with another question, that is a sign that they're probably stalling to think up an answer, or they're trying to deflect from answering. And now we have a tangent, a non-responsive answer, something that sounds like it might be an answer, but he's still not answered about the brother-in-law.
3.5 years. It was very different. Initially, we weren't on the board because we were based in Portugal.
3.5 years ago that we'd be in this situation today. It's a big commitment, and things have changed. We've got different phases in the last 3.5 years, so inevitably there's going to be changes.
So it's not that you've had differences over the way the money was spent? Or
No, not at all. In fact, any of the changes we've made recently is to make the fund more efficient and more responsive. Kate and I always feel, there's still an urgency. It doesn't get easier. And we don't need a large board as such. We're trying to run the fund like a small business in many ways.
Wow. Wow. Listen again. Remember, imagine your daughter is missing. You're raising money to find her. She's been gone for 2 years. Would you be picturing your fund as a small business that's going to run for years and grow and maybe release products like a book and merchandise and speaking fees? Would you describe it as a business? Or would you describe it as a search party? Once again, these words, I believe, are leakage. I don't think they're lying by commission. They're telling us the truth if we listen closely. Most people never listen closely. Most people, what they do is they infer what isn't said. So they put words into the people's mouths. I get lots of comments of people saying, well, Kate was being sarcastic when she said that, or Jerry wasn't serious when he said that. I am actually respecting the McCanns more than you when you do that, because I'm taking them at their word. You, on the other hand, are interpreting what they say. I'm not interpreting. I'm taking everything they say at their word. So when he says he's running the fund like a small business, I believe him. And now I have to use deductive reasoning to understand, what does that mean? How does he picture a small business? How does the reasonable average person picture a small business? Well, typically when someone says a small business, they mean a mom and pop shop. So something that is run for profit with the expectation that it will run on for years. Unlike a search party or a fund to find someone or a GoFundMe, right? In the modern day, a GoFundMe where money is raised for a specific purpose to find whoever's missing or to pay for the surgery on someone who got hurt, right? So a search fund typically would not be described as a small business. I think 9 times out of 10, the parent of a missing child would not describe the fund as a small business. They would describe it as a something with a clear goal, right? A search party to find Madeleine, even if it takes years. And just to wrap up my point, most people, what they do is they don't listen closely. They infer what the people are saying, so they put words into their mouth, or they forgive the words people choose. So if someone says something very specifically or very vaguely, you need to take that into consideration. Why were they so specific? Why were they so vague? Right? Or if they leave out words from a sentence, why did they leave those words out? If you've seen my Meghan Markle video, you'll see how she does that in order to manipulate, in order to paint a different picture.
You've had differences over the way the money was spent? Or
No, not at all. In fact, any of the changes we've made recently is to make the fund more efficient and more responsive. Kate and I always feel, there's still an urgency. It doesn't get easier. And we don't need a large board as such. We're trying to run the fund like a small business in many ways, so that it's focused and that the directors, by and large, are hands-on and responsible for certain areas. Kate and I are integral to all the parts of it. We've got legal advice, we've got specialist media liaison, etc. We've got a retired accountant, and we've got Kate's uncle who is there and is a good governance.
Just like Clarence Mitchell, like I said, Clarence Mitchell came on as their full-time PR guy. That sounds like a long-term decision. And the way they're building up the fund does not sound like a sprint to find Madeleine. It sounds like they're setting up a business. And they said as much, a small business. They're putting in place people for growth, for legal. I'm surprised they don't have a marketing person. Maybe they do have a marketing person, they just call it something else, right? Like awareness. And then what does a small business do? It releases a product. A book, merchandise, speaking fees.
Sort of person. So all of these are taken on board, and we've got a very experienced fund administrator as well.
We talked about the petition.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you.
Yeah.
So, you've mentioned the petition already. Just how many signatures are you hoping to collect? What are you asking people to sign for? What's the point of the petition?
Well, the whole point is to call on the governments, both the...
Now remember, they're here asking for people to do stuff. When the journalist asked them what happened to all the money you spent, they gave no answer. Right? When the journalist asked, are you doing more due diligence on the people you hire in order not to get scammed again? They gave passive, undetailed responses, right? Due diligence is done. References are sought. But now, so all that, right? They've been totally dismissive of any of the questions that the people might have. And now it's time for them to do their ask. Now it's their turn, right? To ask for stuff. And it seems like that's all they do is ask for stuff. And this goes back to something I say a lot in my videos, that liars always have contempt for the people they lie to. So if someone lies to you and gets away with it, don't expect them to be happy that you let them get away with it or grateful. In the mind of a liar, if they've lied to you and gotten away with it, you're stupid. Right? They were right to lie to you. You do not deserve the respect of being told the truth. Right? Their contempt of you was well placed. And I think we're seeing some of that here, where when they are being asked questions about what they do with the money people have donated to them, or the taxpayer funds that have been spent on them, they don't give any clear responses. Right? They're dismissive of it. They change the subject. But now when it's time for them to ask people for stuff, they're not hesitant, they're not ashamed, but they expect you to be ashamed for questioning them. So liars always have contempt for the people they lie to. And that goes for businesses, it goes for governments, it goes for charities, anything. If someone lies to you and gets away with it, do not expect them to forgive you. If someone lies to you and gets away with it, expect them to hold it against you. And the lie should only get bigger and more egregious. Right? That's the sad reality. That's another reason it's so important to be able to catch deception and catch liars.
Both the UK and the Portuguese government to do more in the search for Madeleine. And the first thing we feel that fundamental is that they undertake a complete review of the case. Preferably it should be independent, and we want transparency as well. And we're asking the public to help us in that regard.
And in terms of...
All right, so we're about halfway through this. Let's finish this up in a part 3. I've posted this video in the members section, and I want to take a look at some of their comments and their insights and see if they caught anything that I missed. Before we do that, I just want to briefly address this. I had lots of questions about how do you become a member on my last video. So the way to do that is scroll down to the bottom of this video. I'm just showing this on to you on my last video here. So you scroll down in the pinned comment. You will find 3 links. The first link is to my Madeleine McCann playlist. So you can click on that to see all my Madeleine McCann videos and watch them in order so you can see how the analysis evolved. The second link, if you click it, will take you to the page to become a channel member, where you get access to the members section, where I post up videos early and get feedback, and basically just communicate behind the scenes things with channel members. And then the third link is to deceptiondeck.com, where you can order the Deception Deck, or the awesome Stay True hat I'm wearing, or the member mug I have here with the member emojis on it. And then there's also a contact form there. So if you have a topic you want me to cover, you can submit it through the submission form at deceptiondeck.com. My channel is 100% audience funded. I don't have any sponsors. So I do try to provide value with the merch and the membership. And I appreciate everyone who orders my merchandise, or pre-order the Deception Deck, or becomes a channel member. Thank you very much. All right, so here we have the members section. I posted this video that we're watching now, part 2, to the members yesterday. And so let's look at their comments, see if they missed anything that see if they caught anything that I missed in this video. All right, so first comment is from channel member Mel. Mel, thank you for being a member. And she says, I love how it starts with Kate saying you have to question the motives of people who insist on something without any evidence. Is she referring to herself? She's literally insisting that an abduction occurred and there is no evidence to support this theory. The audacity of these hoaxers is killing me. I'm going to bake a cake and eat the entire thing. If you're a member, you should get that inside joke. Remember that I do premiere every video, and I am in the live chat during the premiere. So if you want to participate in the live chat, sit on your notification so you can participate in the live chat when I premiere the video. I am there. The detectives like Mel are there. And also, even if you're rewatching a video, I recommend rewatching it with the live chat playing, just so you can get all the extra content from the live chat. And Mel caught, obviously, as you can see, the same hypocrisy that I caught with Kate, where she's basically accusing people of doing exactly what she herself is doing with the... And GS Dog Mom and Sophia Breland both caught the fact that this might have actually been projection, where it wasn't just hypocrisy, but Kate was literally accusing people of doing what she does, because doing that takes up so much space in her head, right? So projection happens when someone does something a lot. It takes up so much space in their head because they do it. So now they picture everyone else doing it and they project that onto everyone else. So for example, if someone is constantly, let's say your significant other is constantly accusing you of cheating, then you should be on alert that maybe they are in fact cheating, which is why it seems like such a big deal to them, because it's something that's on their mind a lot. Maybe they're contemplating cheating, or they've done it before, and it takes up lots of space in their head. And as such, they imagine that everyone else is the same, and they project those thoughts onto other people who may not be feeling that way. All right, next up is Sophia Breland. And I like this comment from her where she says, when Jerry talks about the foundation and where the money has gone, he almost seems to get lost on his own. If you have a foundation whose sole purpose is to find your daughter, you don't need to spend money on all the things he brings up. And it looks like she's watched Beyond Me, right? We'll finish the rest of that video in part 3. But this will be interesting in part 3, because Sophia says, even though he does say that if they find Maddie, they won't need the foundation or money anymore, it sounds more like an afterthought. So I am curious to see that in part 3, when he brings that up and how he brings it up. If you've seen part 1, he mentioned finding Maddie once and he didn't mention it again. I want to see if that's the only time he mentions finding Maddie in this part 2. All right, next up is channel member Perpetual Autumn. Thank you for being a member. And thank you to everyone who I'm scrolling past. Sophia Breland, thank you for being a member. Everyone here who's commented. And Perpetual Autumn gives us another preview into what we'll see in part 3. And this looks like a quote from Jerry or Kate and says, 2 key bits of information that individually don't seem key, but put together could give valuable information that could take you that one step closer to finding Madeleine. That, and Perpetual says that is an odd phrase, and says that is an odd phrase in and of itself, but is she speaking of herself and Jerry here? Also key, did they leave the door unlocked that night? Or do certain wells have locks? This is the type of thinking that people think is a big leap, but actually got us to the well theory. And in my summer wells theory, without knowing any of the background, it got us to the theory that people who've been studying that case for years have. Right? So we can never discount what people actually say. There looks like a lot to unpack in this statement, so I'm looking forward to watching that part. It is interesting that they bring up 2 key bits of information. Statistically, when someone's lying, or when they're fishing for a number as a guess, they use the number 3, right? So 3 is known as the liar's number because people just come up with 3 when they're trying to be random, or they're trying to lie, right? Like if a police pulls over someone and says, how many beers did you drink tonight? Typical answer is 3. 2 is more unusual, which might suggest that they are actually thinking about 2 literal pieces of information. Maybe 2 clues that they know are out there, which could expose them, or 2 red herrings that they put out there in order to mislead. But we will keep an eye out for this statement in part 3. All right, next up is this comment from Craig Campbell, who has lots of great comments here. He caught lots of the things that we pointed out, and other people have caught in part 3, which we've not watched yet. Also, if you do want to do part 3, you can watch it yourselves and put comments, right? The more interaction we get on the channel, the richer the analysis is for everyone. So even if you're not a member, I do invite you to participate. Those last few minutes of the video, I have not watched yet. So you can still put your analysis and your unique angle on the case in the comments and see if it lines up with my analysis the way that the members do in the member section. Right? I invite everyone to do that. I do believe I have the smartest subscribers on YouTube. And I always mention that the well theory I did not come up with on my own. I saw the leakage for cold and watery and deep and dark, but I didn't put all that together to come up with well. It was a commenter, actually a couple of commenters, who suggested that, who knew that there were lots of wells in the area and took what I had said in my video and put it together and suggested a well. And that is how breakthroughs happen. And it also just demonstrates how people are learning the lessons and can add to it. All right, so Craig caught this, what happened to the previous money. When the journalist asked that, Jerry said, okay, I think the priority today is about asking the public to help us with a petition. And he correctly notes that wasn't the question, right? So once again, that was a deflection. He never explained what happened to the money they'd already been given, money that was donated out of people's pockets or given to them through taxpayer money. So if there was ever a question to answer, it was that one, to be accountable for money that was given to them. And like I said, he revealed his contempt for the people he lies to by ignoring it and reframing it as, this is what we want now, right? You gave us money. Don't worry about what happened to it. Here's what we want you to do now. So do this. Next up from Smarty X90. Thank you for being a member. And she notices this. This is something that Kate did, and Kate and Jerry both did in part 1. Kate continues to use you rather than I, me, or us. And as I said in part 1, the best indicator that someone is telling the truth is the use of the word I. When someone uses the word I, it indicates that they are aware of themselves as they're speaking, they're putting themselves into their statement, and they are taking ownership of what they're saying. And the exact opposite is dropping the I from a statement or speaking in the passive, where you don't use any pronouns, like Jerry did when he said that due diligence is done. So considering the context of this video, right, this is an interview where they are ostensibly asking the public to sign a petition for them to get the government to do more to help find their daughter. You would expect them to be candid, to speak openly, to use I, to talk about Madeleine, and we don't see any of that. We never, so far in this video, heard them say find Madeleine once, and I don't even know if we heard her name once. To me, this looked like a business interview where someone's interviewing a business owner about how they run their business and potentially doing damage control about a scandal where the business lost some money to an embezzler. All right, so X86, thank you for being a member, has a great comment here. So instead of answering the question about here, so at 2:30, reports on dodgy detectives that took money and didn't investigate anything. How can you assure people money won't be spent on them in the future? Right. So the journalist asked, this is when the journalist asked Jerry about the money that was likely embezzled out of the fund by a dodgy inspector. Instead of answering the question, Jerry talks about how amazing the detectives are and essentially dismisses the question. He feels like he can justify every penny. And here's the great insight from 86. If someone took my money and didn't deliver the goods, I would be upset. Right? So it wouldn't be on the journalist to make me upset about it. I would be upset about it. I would be bringing it up. As he says here, I wouldn't feel a need to defend the detectives, which is a great point. And I think that's why this interview rang like a Business Insider article where someone's interviewing a business owner about a minor scandal and the business owner is trying to mitigate it. Right? Rather than being just as upset as the general public that the fund got robbed. Essentially, the detective who embezzled the money from the fund might as well have taken his daughter and thrown her back out into the wild. Right? Might as well have been complicit in kidnapping her if they thought their daughter was actually out there to be found. But they dismiss it. I think because they know there is no little girl to be found, They want investigators who will sign NDAs, who will do what they are told, and will not ask any questions. There is a reason you will never see the McCanns come to my channel and ask me to help them find their daughter. Right? They will never hire someone who will actually look for the truth. They want people who will go around finding red herrings, finding wild geese to chase, finding more loose ends, and then sending them all to the Portuguese police in order to inundate them with materials and busy work, so that the suspicion never turns on them, but they can continue to control the narrative and look like they're searching and claim that they are in fact innocent. So lots of great comments from the member section. If you want to watch my entire McCann series, you can click on the playlist that's appearing on the screen now. Or if you like this video, you will love this video recommended by YouTube from my channel based on your view history. So please do give those two a watch. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you can be notified when we do part 3. Until next time, stay true.